please call a roll.
Director Davidson,
Yes, I'm here.
Director Thomas,
Okay, the second item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment here this morning on any unagendized subject? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business update of assets management tool. Kevin?
Good afternoon, directors. So yeah, we're here today to talk about a proposal that we received from HDR on asset management. We have HDR on the line, and they made a PowerPoint presentation. They're going to show us here in a minute. So Tracy, if your team wants to take the lead.
With us?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm going to share the screen here. And can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Looks good.
Okay. So my name is Tracy Eden Bishop. I've been with HDR for about a year now, and I came from the El Dorado Irrigation District, so one of your neighbors up in the foothills, where I spent my last 5 years there working on asset management planning for the district's water treatment plants. We have several other of our team members on this call, and they'll be introducing themselves as we go through our presentation. I just want to thank you for having us. We're excited to talk with you about how we might be able to help you improve your CIP planning process. We did meet with your staff a couple of months ago to talk about where the district is and its planning process for GIS and computer maintenance management implementation and the integration of those systems. We also talked about where your most urgent needs are and your pain points, and what your near and long-term goals are for asset management planning and CIP development improvements. At that meeting, we provided an overview of asset management planning and how that leads to improved CIP planning. We also provided a few examples of work that HDR's done for other clients. And from that meeting, we got a better understanding of the district's needs and prepared our proposal consistent with that discussion. And what Kevin asked us to do today was, it's a little bit of a repeat of what we did with staff, but our goal today is to provide the engineering committee with an overview of some foundational asset management planning principles and how they support CIP planning, give you a few examples of what we've done for other clients, and provide you with a summary of our proposal. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Alan Scott. And Kevin, this is a new face for you. We have our veteran here, our asset management planning veteran, to kind of talk about some foundational principles.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting us in to talk about asset management and how it can help support your CIP program. As Tracy mentioned, I'm Alan Scott. I've been with HDR for coming up on 9 years, and I've been doing asset management for about 25 years. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to see today is similar to what we did in the last workshop, but we've got a few more details on the process here, which I'm going to explain. And the reason why asset management is important in the capital planning process is because it provides a structured pathway for capital planning. When we work with agencies, we see a whole spectrum of process on how they do their capital plans. from basically just everybody getting into a room and whoever whoever has the loudest voice gets to work their projects, all the way over to the other side where you've got a data-driven process that uses information on your assets and infrastructure to tell you where you should be investing your making your capital investments. And every agency has questions like the ones you see on the screen, and it's almost impossible to pay for everything that needs to be done all at once. So there really needs to be a process to measure, prioritize, package, and schedule things into a capital plan that's transparent. It's easy for everybody to see, and it helps provide confidence to stakeholders and customers. So next slide. So what exactly is asset management? The graph you see here is basically the cost profile of any typical asset. And you might actually see this with something that is more familiar to you, like your car. You have to spend money to acquire your car. You go through periods of maintenance and rehabilitation throughout the life. You're trying to extend the life and get the most economical use of your car so that it doesn't break down prematurely. And then at the end of its life, you need to get rid of it and get a replacement. And that's exactly what asset management is. When you have one car or a couple cars, it's not a big deal. But when you have thousands of assets, it becomes a bigger challenge, especially when they're bought at different times over the life of your infrastructure, and they last for different periods of time. So that becomes a challenge, and that's why asset management needs to have a process in order to extend and maximize the useful life of your assets. Next slide. So how does that fit into capital planning? There are several layers here in this triangle that all support the capital planning process. And the way asset management fits is that it provides a transparent, repeatable, data-driven planning process that you can use to reproduce the results year over year. We start with the bottom layer, which is the asset registry, and that's the most important piece for asset management. You need to know what you own. You need to have a list of your assets and understand where they're located. Once you have that, you start looking at, okay, what condition are my assets in, and where am I going to have to spend money next in order to extend useful life or to replace these assets? So along with condition assessment would be risk, because you can't spend money completely assessing every asset. That would be pretty costly and not time efficient. So what asset management does, it provides a risk framework that allows you to prioritize assets for condition assessment and for capital planning. And this risk framework is based on what you see at the top of that pyramid, which is levels of service and performance metrics, how your organization gauges how it's performing its customer service and its levels of service to stakeholders and the community. And so this risk assessment allows you to create scores for every asset, and then you can prioritize condition assessment and capital planning. And then that middle tier right below levels of service is where your capital investment and optimized operation and maintenance come in. It helps you to more efficiently, based on evidence, invest your time and your money in maintaining your infrastructure. Next slide. So going back to our cost profile, asset management, it provides a framework all along the asset life cycle. And the actual text that you see in red here are where you would focus on for capital planning. You can do risk-based maintenance and replacement and renewal. You can do focus on condition and performance monitoring, making sure you're focusing on your most important and critical assets. And that helps to inform and support capital planning. So next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more detail about some of those levels in that triangle. And the bottommost level is the most important, I believe, and it's the asset registry. And it's being able to have a comprehensive picture of what you own. And I know you've already got a lot of good data on your assets in your GIS and your CMMS. And these are great examples of authoritative data sources. And by that, I mean, you want one place in which you can manage the data and you can go back to as a source of truth for all your data on your assets. And here in this picture, you see a GIS map, and then you see a screenshot from a CMMS. This isn't your data, this is just an example, but these are two different systems, but each one is an authoritative data source on different types of information that's important for capital planning. Once you have those authoritative data sources established, you can determine what data you want to collect, and you should only collect and manage the data that's important for your decision making. And the data will need to be organized either spatially in the GIS or hierarchically if you're in say a plant or a pump station. And this is the most important data layer in order to achieve success with asset management. And we're going to be talking more about data when Joel steps up to talk about some of the projects we've done. Next slide. So once you understand what assets you have, you need to determine, what condition are they in and how soon am I going to have to spend money to replace them. And as I mentioned before, it would be great if you could just spend your money and totally assess every asset, but that would be impractical. Some assets are hidden. Some would be very costly to do that with, but there are different levels of assessment that you can do. And having a risk model is going to help you determine what level of condition assessment you need to take for each of your assets. A risk model creates a risk score for every asset, and it's based on two components: a likelihood of failure, which is on the left there, what is the likelihood or how soon is an asset going to fail. There's certain parameters that you can measure to determine that. And then on the right-hand side, the consequence of failure. What if that asset does fail? How big of a deal is that? Is that going to impact any of the key service metrics like health and safety, regulatory compliance, financial or service delivery for my assets? And by creating a risk model and having a risk score for every asset, you can really start to prioritize where you need to invest in condition assessment and capital planning dollars. So next slide. So once you have your risk model and your condition assessment, you would end up with a list of repairs and renewals and replacement recommendations for your infrastructure. And that's a great place to start, but you're not going to be able to do that all in 1 year. In fact, the smart thing is to do it at the right time when the asset is at the end of its useful life. So having all of this data allows us to package and sequence these renewal and replacement recommendations into a CIP. This is an example of a 10-year CIP where you can sequence the renewal and replacement work and see what's coming up in terms of your anticipated costs. And this helps with capital planning and financing, and it helps provide a transparent, repeatable, and defensible way to communicate what the upcoming and anticipated capital planning needs are for an organization. And next slide. So once you have this information, what do we do with it? Well, there's this slide shows basically it's a conceptual slide that shows a spectrum of maturity in asset management that organizations may have. All the way on the left, you're basically at the foundational level where you may be just reacting to whatever is broken that day or looking at a very short-term scope. All the way on the right-hand side, you've got optimized strategic planning, looking at focusing on advanced methods for assessing your most critical assets and maintaining them, looking at alternative means for funding and long-term financial viability. And in the middle, you've got a mix. And we know that your organization has made some progress and is doing some work on his capital plan. You've got robust capital plans at this point, or a capital planning process, but we know that you want to kind of move up the curve here. So that would be what our first recommended steps are that are in our proposal, is to make an assessment, determine where you are, look for the gaps, and develop a roadmap in order to move forward and move up the curve. Not every organization has to get to the ultimate level 3 optimization. Asset management is going to be a right fit for each organization. So it would be, the ultimate answer there is going to be for whatever works for your organization as well. So with that, I want to turn it over to Joel. Joel Griffin is going to talk about some of the case studies that we've done for a couple of different agencies that we've worked with.
All right. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to go over a couple use cases where we've helped districts of a similar size, get up to speed a little bit on their GIS system. And this is a case where for this one, for Delta Diablo, they do not have an individual designated as a sole person for GIS. If you go to, some of the more mid-sized utilities, then, they'll have a GIS, at least of one staff that's dedicated to GIS work. But in this case, for Delta Diablo, just like what Alan was saying, started with a data readiness assessment, looking at the current data sources, seeing what they have confidence in. We heard from Kevin that there's some areas in the district that not very confident on the spatial accuracy, or even some of the other attributes like material diameter and those types of things. So with Delta Diablo, we conducted that data readiness assessment. We found where their gaps were, and then created a field application that their field workers could go out and use, and they could redline certain parts of the system to identify areas that need to be updated. That would get communicated over to us at HDR, and also the junior engineering staff to help monitor. And then over a series of a few months, we're able to get up to a validation that they're happy with. And then once we have that in place, we're able to use the ArcGIS Online environment that you guys already have to configure dashboards and web applications to see just simple metrics on, how many different lift systems, how many miles of gravity pipe, force main pipe you have in your system, and have that at the ready for the whole organization. So it's not just in the hands of engineering or other specific user groups, but really could be used throughout the organization. So even folks like customer service could be able to look up this kind of information and have it at their fingertips. For this one was just using ArcGIS Online, we're able to integrate a couple of the other business systems, and just starting with having a link to the SharePoint PDF drawings, the as-builts or their improvement drawings, so that they could go to a neighborhood and be able to see those improvement plans on their mobile device, or just in the office as well through a web browser. And also integrating in the WinCan video inspections. That was on a separate server. They're using a standard naming convention, and that's something that Alan is very big into, as well as making sure we have asset categories and naming convention as part of the registry. And then when you have that, you can easily create unique identifiers for the video inspections and for the individual pipes and valves and everything else that's part of the system. And then what we really saw as part of this project is the communication with the engineering and operations really improving, because they're able to say, okay, in this section, we're not sure, we're out in the field and we're not sure of the ownership of this individual pipe segment. Is this a private pipe, or is this owned by or managed by a different agency? So we started breaking down those communication blocks that were there before, just because they just serve different purposes. So now that group has now increased from just the engineering and now operations working hand in hand, but then also some of the outside agencies also getting ideas from them, sharing some data agreements so they can see some of the other systems that are coming through in and out of their network. So we like to bring this up as a good example, but we really saw, just by starting with a needs assessment and identifying some low-hanging fruit as far as finding the gaps and addressing those gaps, able to give the engineering folks more confidence in what they're looking at and to make more, I guess, educated decisions on their CIP program and different pipes that we're going to be, potentially part of the replacement program in the next few years. And having a solid authoritative system, like Alan mentioned, is really critical in the base structure that you need to have going forward. Let's go on to the next one. This next one is a slightly more mature program. This is the Salmon Water District down the road here. They also went through a strategic plan, but then we went through and did the implementation work for that plan. So we designed, configured, and maintained ArcGIS Enterprise. So this is the on-premise offering from Esri. Instead of being ArcGIS Online cloud hosted, this is on-prem. Converted all their data into a network GIS model. So this is using utility network where you can do traces, isolation traces when you have a water outage event, be able to identify the valves and affected customers as part of that. But a lot of it was just core validation of their data, looking at it, finding the gaps, finding where they were not confident in the spatial accuracy, or other gaps as far as their network, maybe be PRVs where they should be that were missing, and putting those in place. And then they're able to tie that together with their integrations. One of them in this case was CityWorks, where they read the services directly, and they're able to build their CIP program off of looking at the maintenance history records. But they're also able to tie it into some of the other systems like their customer information system and their water modeling program. But we saw, a lot of process improvement that had been done through paper forms or just email traffic of engineering project tracking, having a common dashboard for them to see those different projects that are happening throughout the district. And this is just all using out of the box Esri software. So something you guys already have licensing for and everything. The WillServe platform. So this is for new water services, the whole process of going from planning, design to approval and billing, all done through GIS. The field collection efforts, instead of being done separately through third-party consultants, they were brought into the ecosystem within ArcGIS and able to do the hydrant inspections every year off of the authoritative data. So again, you were having copies of things in different places. It's all running off the authoritative data set. And then, of course, the CIP planning in the end is the accumulation of all these different processes, but then looking at the CMMS system and looking at work order history, looking at life cycle status and age expectancy, and putting that all into the CIP planning process. We did some other things as part of this project as well, like conducted 3D scanning. And but it wasn't just done in one day. This was to the second to last bullet is completed in several phases. So you don't have to have everything done, all within 6 months. It's a step-by-step process, but I think with the initial assessment, you want to look at and identify the priorities and then be able to go from there. Is there a question?
No, I'd say go ahead with finish up the presentation.
Okay, yeah, we're going on to go ahead and pass it over to Alex.
That concludes the presentation.
Actually, it's coming back to me. So sorry, I didn't have my camera on earlier, you guys, but I do now. So just want to go over our proposal. And as I mentioned, the proposal we sent you represents what we think were what you're looking for based on our meeting with staff. It represents a small step to document your current CIP planning process, identify data gaps, and provide you with a strategic roadmap for continuous CIP and asset management improvements over several years. Our intention is that the roadmap would lead to building a strong foundation that would provide clarity and confidence for executive staff and the board for making long-term decisions. So,
and thank you guys before we dive into the details of that, though, if I could just jump in, this is Michael. And, I think this is like you mentioned already, this is a phased effort. And I want to acknowledge that, I think Kevin and our team have done an excellent job over time on our CIP program and the projects that we've implemented. And I like the term that, I can't remember who it was, one of you used to right size asset management. Because some of these in the case studies, there's some of it that would make sense for us. And there's some of those examples that probably wouldn't. And so I think the objective of this kind of planning process is to figure out, what are we doing well? And then where are some ways that we can improve, and make sure that we're making the smartest possible decisions. But, improve on where we are right now. And so we wanted to kind of talk through this with engineering committee before we launch into this effort and see if you guys had any questions or back.
Okay, Michael, this is the first time we've seen anything in writing on this, and the schedule as presented in this handout looks like we've slipped on the time schedule that this.
Yeah, I think that was more of kind of a representative, like the time that it could be done in, but we haven't started yet. We're still, in the planning conceptual phase for this.
Okay, and listening to the explanation of what assets would be reviewed and focused upon. We have a very complex environment that we're living in now with the California Air Resources Board, that some of our assets might not run out of a useful life before we have to get rid of them for political reasons. So I'm curious about how, if this HDR team has run into that in your work with other districts so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think regulatory compliance is one of the drivers, but it might be a good idea if you guys want to finish kind of walking through the process here, that and then address that while we're talking about it. That makes sense.
Okay. So I will, I don't know if Alan, if you wanted to address the Air Board question before I jump into the proposal, or.
I can do it. I can do quickly, and we can come back to it if we want to discuss it further later. But yeah, I mean, that's not an unusual issue or challenge for capital planning. There's a lot of times regulatory drivers are going to make an asset quote unquote obsolete because it's not going to meet the new service levels, that are being imposed by regulatory environment. Those factors can be put into the risk model, and they could be factors that develop and calculate the risk score. But also, the risk model is going to be a tool that you will use in conjunction with other tools and engineering domain knowledge that you all have based on your knowledge of your system. So between all of those kind of pieces of information, you can provide an informed and prioritized CIP. And maybe there's several things that are regulatory issues, but the risk assessment is like the tiebreaker to help you figure out which one to do first. So there's lots of ways to factor that in, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean that the asset is about to fall apart before you replace it. We understand that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, well, I'll just jump right into the project objectives and desired outcomes. So the first project objective is an assessment of your current practices, where we'd be evaluating asset management and CIP planning tools, data, and workflows to understand the district's strengths and limitations at this time. The next objective would be to identify gaps affecting your decision-making when it comes to CIP planning by detecting missing data, inconsistent processes, and system constraints that impact your decision-making. Defining practical data practices by developing manageable data collection and maintenance methods that integrate smoothly into your daily operations, kind of, collecting information as you go. And then finally, to provide you with a phased multi-year roadmap, technical memorandum, which would create a logical roadmap sequencing improvements while considering your fiscal and your staffing constraints. Scope of work. Of course, we have project management tasks, but I just wanted to get into the meat of this. So our first task would be to do a data and systems assessment. And that would include evaluating your current asset management and CIP planning practices. We'd start with a questionnaire to find out kind of how you operate, and then collate that information, and then sit down with staff in a workshop to have a discussion about, what your goals are and how you're operating now. We'd also review asset data sources and information management tools that you have, and we'd be looking for information on your asset inventory, the location, condition, remaining useful life of your assets, original and replacement costs, that kind of information. And with that, we would develop a data gap summary. And then also we would have a discussion about your near and long-term asset management, CIP planning goals. So the deliverables associated with this task, of course, meeting agenda and notes, a draft data gap identification list, and a draft data gap closure plan. So that would be kind of our first step. Our second step would be to synthesize those findings into a plan, a roadmap for you for continuous CIP improvement and prioritization. And it would include the current state of your information systems that support your planning process, a summary of the data gaps, and a closure plan. So kind of, collating everything into a technical memorandum that you can use for planning purposes. We'd identify software tools that could be implemented or improved. We would look at key information that engineering and operations and maintenance staff could collect in their normal course of business. So you have operators out in the field visiting facilities, taking pictures, figuring out what size things are, documenting that, what material, nameplate information off of equipment, that kind of thing. So we would provide you with actually some forms that you could be filling out, that staff could be filling out in the field. And then the roadmap would also include a prioritized, sequenced list of steps with estimated cost for each year going forward. The deliverables, again, agenda, notes, and then a draft technical memorandum that we would provide to staff, and then meet with staff to make sure we hit the mark on what you're looking for, make any final tweaks, and then a final technical memorandum with that plan for you going forward. And of course, we'd have our aim is definitely to use a strategic approach, because it is a relatively small budget. And so we would use virtual meetings, existing information, and just really focusing on a tool that you can use going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Alex Johnson, who's going to talk about some additional optional services that are in our proposal that might provide you with some more immediate tools for collecting data, user interface kinds of things. So Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Very briefly, I am a civil engineer and environmental engineer. I've been working with HDR for about almost 3 years now, and I've worked with Alan for most of my career, so he and I are good friends, go a long way back. But my focus is in my career has been on geographic information systems and information systems in general, and how they integrate and talk to each other, specifically for agencies like yours. And so some of these optional services address that point, and I'll be functioning as kind of a technical lead in terms of the information systems integration on the project. So the first optional service is just some GIS updates. This would involve selecting a targeted area that we select with district staff, and review the electronic as-built information, which could be CAD information or scanned information, and georegister those as-builts to bring them into real-world space and overlay them with your existing GIS, and then use that to update your GIS for a specific area, both the spatial accuracy of the information and the attributes, the information that we can pull off of that annotation that's in those as-builts, both in the GIS and potentially in your mobile MMS system. This would get us kind of into the guts of the process of filling in those data gaps that we identify, and would help to get a deeper understanding of that data quality, and to help create having that knowledge once it's done would help us create a realistic level of effort estimate to fill the data gaps in full as we go forward. So that's one optional service in there that we could add to the project as well. Secondly, GIS applications. Joel alluded to this, but you guys already own GIS software, and that gives you access to a lot of the Esri, the ESRI, the GIS environment, and there are lots of tools in there that are useful that you own licenses for, but it's not obvious what they can do. And after we have a chance to look at your data, we could probably identify several configurable apps that are already part of your licensing, and we could review the existing GIS layers, and we can identify an app or two that would bring value to your existing data using your existing GIS investment, and spend a small amount of time to configure those applications and deploy them to your users or your other stakeholders. So that's a second optional service we could add in here for basically a little cost, leveraging existing investments that you already have in technology. And then finally, we could also prepare an asset management policy for your board to adopt. This would define a framework to help guide governance and prioritization as you move into the future, and help align your decisions with the strategic plan that we develop under this effort. So it could be a guiding overall policy, and we could help write that plan. So those are the package of the optional services under here, and they could be shaped and defined more specifically as we work through this CIP planning, a strategic planning process. So I'll take that back to you, Tracy.
Okay. Let's get my camera turned back on here. So just to go over our budget, the total budget is set at a not to exceed amount of about $54,000. And as Alex mentioned, those additional services that we defined in the proposal, which are not included in that price and that fee, could be authorized, down the road. And again, we are really sensitive to minimizing cost using virtual meetings and existing data, and just trying to keep the cost down to give you the best bang for your buck with this initial step. So with that, are there any questions that we can answer for you?
Yeah, and real quick, I just wanted to follow up. Thank you guys for the information. It's really, really helpful. And on some of those optional items, I mean, I think we as staff acknowledge where we have, where we have some gaps, right? And our GIS data, we know, isn't as accurate as any of us would like it to be. And that's a big lift to actually, improve that accuracy over time. But what we see, the technical memorandum and the gap analysis that would come out of this, we think while there's a cost here, there's a lot of value there for us. Kevin and I have talked about over the last couple of years, and I've talked about it with Mark and Charles before him about, how our process could potentially be improved. And we just lack the bandwidth to really dedicate the time and the staff resources to doing that. So I think, considering the savings we had from the ongoing vacancy in engineering that we could never seem to fill, this is a good use of those resources and really kind of jumpstart our effort to improve the process here. So that's why we thought we would we would bring this to the engineering committee and we're hoping to go use this in the next school year.
It would seem to me that that optional help that they could give us on tightening up our GIS information, and particularly in view of the fact that the board just approved that new $40,000 contract for the mobile MMS. If this group has expertise in that, and they could look for gaps and if they exist from our provider, wouldn't that be a good place to start? I mean, how do you analyze our assets if we don't know where they are?
Well, I think we'll get a lot of that discussion in the memo here, whether we work with HDR to actually upgrade the GIS, I think is the optional service. Kevin, did you want to?
Yeah, mobile MS is a great service for like work orders and service orders, and it has maps in it. So over the years, we've been able to capture a lot of good information on like areas that have failed. That kind of information can be put into this GIS so that we can kind of use that information we already have to plan. But as far as the information that's in the GIS, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made. Spatially, the pipes aren't where they're shown a lot of times. We're finding that a lot when we're doing the hydraulic modeling in the INI study. There's a lot of the garbage in, garbage out thing right now that we got going on. So we really want to refine our GIS and make sure it matches what's out there in the field. Make sure we got the age of the pipes in there, the condition of the pipes, so that we can extend the life of our infrastructure. Because right now, we've been doing a good job at delivering these big projects based on like operational needs, staff experience, and the availability of funding. But the goal is to improve that going forward so that we can maybe rehabilitate this infrastructure instead of having the full replacement. And then give us a long-term outlook on what our CIP costs are going to be past the 3 and 5 year period that we have right now in our CIP.
Yeah, well, I heard some words that would indicate that HDR has found instances where there are elements of our MMS system that we're not utilizing, or that other agencies weren't utilizing, and they could come in and quickly review that. And are there opportunities there? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I think mobile MS is great for what we're using it for now, and it really does a lot of good for us. But I think there's a lot more features, a lot more information that you can put into mobile MS to make it more powerful, and then we can extract that information out of mobile MS and get it into this modelings in the GIS.
And the Esri, the actual GIS layers, and whether there's other applications that we could utilize to take advantage of that information, I think is where that would come into play.
Yeah, and just to add, mobile MMS has a lot of the information that they would query. It's just about mining the data within MMS to get what they need. So all the assets are in MMS. They can track the history of failures on a pipeline through MMS, through the work orders that are created or the service requests that are created. So you can export all that into a spreadsheet. And so MMS will really kind of be the vehicle to allow HDR to understand and to get granular when it comes to the detail. The information is there. Operations really kind of, when you think about asset accountability and staff accountability, it's driven through the work order system. Our folks are mindful of the fact that, their time has to be accounted for. And so the work that they do is incorporated into MMS. It's about being able to mine that information to optimize the planning for asset replacement or improvements in the future.
I would suspect that in these initial meetings, if we go forward with this, that they would be able to look and see at a glance the work orders that we have. We have I don't know, I could be wrong, but it seems like to me that we have some unusual conditions in our system, in that we've taken over distribution systems that on huge subdivisions that were done 40 years ago, and the developers use the low bidder to do the installation. And you know, how can, there's no way in the world that we can predict where the next failure is going to be unless you could have a device that would look and see where the sharp rocks are from the native backfill that they put back in the trenches. So, and I don't know, are we unique in that regard, or do other nearby utilities have that same problem?
I think everybody is kind of at that point in their infrastructure in this area where it's getting to that age where it needs to be rehabilitated, replaced. And it's just a matter of how to spend the money the most wisely on the worst areas so that we can maximize, you know, and extend the life of our system as a whole.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that there was one facility or an agency that had 68 miles of pipeline, and we have 350. Well, I mean,
Yeah, we're a long pipe out there.
Well, I mean, I support it. I don't know why we wouldn't be wanting to track everything better. I mean, seems like it'd be a good tool for staff. And so what do you want from us? It's only $53,000. It seems like that's under your authority anyway.
Yeah, it is, and if we do it, it'll be built into the budget. So we just wanted to kind of, I think it's going to be a significant effort, and so we want to make sure run it by you guys first.
it says in the staff report that you have enough money in the budget for the 53,000, but is that half of it for this fiscal year and half of it in the next fiscal year?
We'll have to talk about adjusting the schedule and when we kick it off. But yeah, at this point, at a minimum, some of that would be in the next.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I just agree that it's a worthwhile effort. Maybe somebody online that might want to comment.
Is there, somebody online that would like to comment?
Yes, sir. This is Francisco, and I want to applaud these efforts. As a retired engineer, made his living on data and the accuracy and completeness of data, and understanding that the CIP is probably the biggest driver of rates. If you can get your handle around when assets are going to start giving you a lot more expense than we want to tolerate, and we can do it early, go for it. This is very similar to the decision you all faced when you were considering adding that software package to help the external affairs production of a better website. It gives the engineering and operations that same powerful effort multiplier by having reliable, accurate, timely data on which to make fairly costly decisions. So I say if you wait more than a day to make a decision, you're wasting time. So I couldn't give it a more positive reception. Thank you, Michael, for bringing it to the table, and let's hope that they can have an impact on the 2.5 ICF that you guys are trying to convince us of on the urban water management plan. Thank you.
Did HDR put you up to that, Francisco?
13 payments are due over the next 14 weeks, but those are all virtual payments, like they're virtual.
Gotcha.
Meetings. No problem. I never heard of HDR before here, so
Sure.
you know, I assume that you have already done your due diligence and put forth the most competitive and most professional solution to the problems that you face. So I didn't question your selection whatsoever.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so you just want a recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, and to the HDR team. Appreciate the presentation. We'll be following up with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Where did Francisco go? Thank you, Francisco, for the thumbs up on this. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're gonna move, we didn't approve the minutes. Motion to accept the minutes.
I move for approval.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to 4B, ADU policy update. Kevin?
This is one item that we've been asked for a few times recently. So we kind of wanted to go over the new ADU policy. So our current ADU policy, which is the accessory dwelling units ordinance, is outdated. And it needs to reflect the recent state law changes. So we're proposing a clear and concise policy for ADUs. We're proposing the smaller ADUs, 750 square feet and less, would not pay any capacity fees. We have a lot of these buildings within our service areas. There's pool houses, the granny flats, converted sheds that people live in, and that type of thing. So the units 750 square feet and less, we don't think makes a major impact on our system. And they're hard to equate when you compare to the main house because we have such a variation in main house sizes that we want to concentrate on the larger ADUs. The ones 751 square feet to 1,200 square feet. These ADUs are an additional demand on our system for both water and sewer. So we're looking at a proportional approach that's similar to what our existing policy is. That would be 55% of the standard capacity fee for an ADU.
You know, that 1,200 square foot house is a 3-bedroom house. There's a guy that built 50 of them in Rancho Calaveras.
Yeah, so kind of how we came at the 55% is we looked at, you know, 1,800 square foot house is probably this average size house. Some areas have smaller houses and some of our service areas have larger houses. We have a mixed bag, but if you figure the average ADU is about 1,000 square feet, that's how you came up with the 55%. So ADUs over 1,200 square feet per state law would be considered and treated like a full new residence. So existing water and sewer connections could be used if they're adequately sized. You'd still be charged the 55%, but you could avoid having to pay for a new service line installed for your water and sewer. So that could reduce the construction cost for the customers. So we have a lot of areas that have the step systems, which are the septic tanks. So a lot of the ADUs in those areas would require a new septic tank and a new line. So the customer would have to pay for a new step tank.
I have a question on that, Kevin. You have a house that's on a step system and you put a 700 square foot ADU behind the house. Are you saying that a new septic tank would have to be?
It would have to be in that size. It'd probably be a case by case, depending on whether it can flow by gravity, if it's not putting much demand on it, or if they put a small pump in, they might be able to pump it to the existing tank. But we could look at that from an engineering approach. But our septic tanks that we have out there are relatively small compared to what people have for septic tanks with leach fields. So to put a 1,200 square foot ADU on with an existing septic tank, it would overload it.
Well, I'm just trying to visualize how hydraulically it would work. You have an existing septic tank and a pump evacuates that septic tank. If you put another septic tank that fill up, they both would fill to the top. Are you suggesting that something changes in the
They would need a new lateral too, so they'd be completely separate. Yeah, they would be completely separate because we've added ADUs in Southworth that has septic tanks, and it would never worked out to have a same tank work for both of them. So I wanted to open it up to feedback. This is kind of every agency kind of does it different. There's not one standard way of doing this. A lot of the new regulations for ADUs apply to the land use agency and not as much the water districts. So we have some flexibility. The 750 square foot number was chosen because that's the same threshold that residents wouldn't have to pay RIM fees on for the county. We figured that was a good cutoff mark so they could avoid paying capacity fees and avoid paying land use fees if they're under 750 square feet. Not all agencies do that. Some have a threshold of 120 square feet. It's completely up to the board, but being that we have a lot of these outbuildings and detached garages, pool houses in our existing system that haven't historically been considered ADUs, we thought it was equitable to leave the 750 square foot threshold in there.
Getting back to the requirement of putting in an extra tank, I would think that there could be some challenges. Typically, these things are going to be sandwiched into a backyard. And if you put the additional requirement of making space for an additional septic tank, I think you're going to run out of space occasionally.
Yeah, that could be something that we put that in the policy or the proposed ordinance, just as I guess it wouldn't have to do that all the time if feasible to use the existing one. But a lot of times the terrain will slope off and they can't flow by gravity to that tank, or the tank's usually on the front side of the house and the accessory dwellings on the back side of the house. So you can't route the sewer around to the front of the house. There's a lot of complications with it. So we figured 9 out of 10 times they're going to require to have another tank installed.
What is it, when it comes to the permitting, I mean, it seemed to me that anybody that's wants to build an ADU on one of our systems that has the septic tanks, probably come here first and find out the feasibility. I hate to see them go get a permit, spend all that time, and then all of a sudden realize they don't have the
Yeah, generally the building department refers them to us when people pull permits.
what's
But not
that?
always. Usually the building department refers them to CCWD when they pull their permit.
Well, let's not make it usually, let's make it like always.
Okay, yeah, we used to have coordination meetings with the building department. And I think we can start those again, and
You might just, flag, I'm sure the building department doesn't have any idea where we have these systems. So they wouldn't know who to refer to us. Well, so I mean, I'd just like to see some coordination like that, because
Yeah.
I can see that happening. Somebody could get, heavily invested and then all of a sudden say,
Deep into the design and
Yeah,
the
well,
permit fees.
yeah.
yeah, and then
Holy
some
cow.
of these smaller areas that have these step systems, they're already pretty challenged with capacity. That's something they want to talk to us first, because just because we allow ADUs, if there's not capacity, they're not able to connect. So, I mean, there's other considerations that need to happen.
All right, well, let's just, add that to our things that we need to
No
square away
problem.
with the building department.
So we have a draft ordinance in here. I don't know if you were able to read through that, but it's pretty much what I described. It goes into junior ADUs, which are units built within the existing building. So that's if maybe they have a house on stilts and they build a room downstairs, or they closet space that was built out to an ADU or whatever, the unused space. That's a junior ADU, and that's not, they're exempt from all these regulations.
Have anything to add?
No, I don't. Good.
I don't have any issues with it.
So thank you.
4C service connection points. Kevin.
I had a break in between here, but
Uh-huh.
it's all right. So I want to kind of talk about water and sewer connection requirements. So staff's requesting direction on whether to develop a formal ordinance for water and sewer connection requirements. The goal is to create a clear and concise rules across the district. This proposal doesn't intend to change the way we do anything, the way we currently do it. The ordinance would mainly formalize and clarify the existing practices and requirements. The ordinance would support long-term system reliability and public health. Currently, developments within the CCWD service area are already routed to the district utilities through the county and environmental health. Historically, CCWDs relied on individual connection agreements with property owners. These agreements can be difficult to track as the properties change ownership over time. A formal ordinance would provide a clearer and more concise approach. Many other agencies and municipalities already have similar ordinances. Properties within CCWD service area would generally be required to connect and maintain water and sewer services.
New, you're talking about new,
New, yeah,
new.
or infill lots.
Does it say that here?
Uh,
New connections? Because I don't want to
yeah,
get the rumor mill going again about people who have septics.
so yeah, I was getting to that about septics here in a minute. Yeah, that wouldn't include if we're putting a new sewer line in the road and they have an existing septic, they wouldn't have to connect. Yeah, so existing septic systems would not be forced to connect
Okay.
unless required by regulators if somebody comes in and they require them to connect, which wouldn't be us. Existing private wells could continue to be used for irrigation and agricultural purposes as long as they have backflow device. So, but new private domestic wells and septic systems would generally not be allowed where we can serve them. Service terminated, and there we have policies on termination. It's if your house burns down or there's no water use in the last 2 years, and that type of stuff. Then we allow people to terminate service, but they have to prove that it's not inhabitable structure. And so capacity fees would not be refunded, but if they were to come back in the future, the existing dollar amounts of capacity fees they paid in the past could be used to offset some of the costs of the new capacity fee. That's what our current policy says for termination. So the ordinance would also clarify CCWD's role in reviewing proposed subdivisions within the county. So we have a number of subdivisions that are adjoining to our service area. So we want to have the ability for line extensions to those areas that are outside of our existing service area, but still within our sphere of influence. The public water and sewer service provides reliable infrastructure, water quality. Everybody has benefits from fire protection and public health benefits. So this item is for discussion, but I'd like some feedback on this. And we just have all this information kind of in different places, and a lot of it comes from the county requires them to connect within 200 feet of the sewer system. We just don't have one place that explains all our rules and regulations for this type of stuff. And in order to clean it up, we do a lot of work chasing down new houses that sold and chasing down people to get them to sign the agreements that the original property owner had. We believe that the original property owner, when they signed, it's binding for the new property owner, but it's always a discussion we have with new property owners. That's where we're at, and I'd like to do it if that's something that you're interested in kind of pursuing, getting a formal ordinance together.
What would the situation be where, for instance, at Southworth Estates, if we ran out of capacity, are we allow somebody to put a septic tank in?
So we still have capacity there. We just allowed an ADU there.
I'm saying, if it doesn't.
No, if there's not capacity, they wouldn't be allowed to put an ADU in.
No, it's not an ADU. Would they be allowed to put their own septic system in? And not hook up to us?
Yeah, if we couldn't provide
For a
service,
new house, yeah.
I think it would be a case by case scenario, what it would take to get it to where we could serve them versus, yeah, I think generally if we can't serve somebody, we let them put their own infrastructure in. So if you can't serve them,
In any situation where there's, hopefully we never have a moratorium, we can stay ahead of everything, but it has happened. So it could happen again. So do we need anything in there that states that position, or is that just bad luck?
yeah, I think we could put something there that would say if we can't serve, or maybe not those terms, but this would just apply to people that we can serve.
Yeah, think about that a little bit. Got anything else? No. Is there any public comment?
So the direction is to kind of go forward with the draft ordinance and bring it to the board.
Yep.
It outlines these items.
Yep.
Go ahead. Okay, thanks.
Pardon? Okay, Francisco?
Are you going to track the kinds of applications that we're getting over time and see if the ordinance is meeting the objectives that Kevin wants to achieve by proposing it this way, or are we just gonna let it ride?
I don't know if I completely understand the question.
So you mentioned several different types of ADU conditions, situations, et cetera. Each of them having a different impact on the applicability of capacity fees, refunds, et cetera. Are we going to track that in any way to know, hey, we thought it was going to be this, but it's really that, and our ordinance is not aligned with what that is?
Yeah, we track
We definitely track our
calls. Yeah.
new connections.
Yeah, we track new connections. We track will serves. We track anytime somebody calls in. If it's informal, we might not track it. Some people call in and ask if there's a water main in front of their house. We don't track that kind of information, but we generally track when somebody puts an application in.
I was referring more to the different types of ADUs that you described.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, that was the last item, but I can go back to that. The ADUs, yeah, we can track we get applications for the ADUs, the different sizes, and we have a log of how many ADUs, and they have a different billing code, so we track them on the different billing code.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, all right, where are we going next? Timber Trails, Redwood Tank and Booster Pump Station? Pardon? Oh, did we?
Did we skip one?
Service line fee.
We can go through that one first if you guys want.
Oh, service line? Yeah, please, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. This is a topic of discussion based on the service line fees that the engineering department, we're looking at establishing that fee for the construction of service line, which service line, if you were to define it, it stems from, starts from the water main and provides service to any individual property, and it terminates district's responsibility at the meter box. So from the water main to the meter box, we're defining that as a service line, and in practice, district service lines are almost in 1 inch in size. So in the past, we've worked with installation of new service lines. They're usually connected with the part of new development or new improvements that are happening for an individual lot most of the time in our area. So in order to serve them, it starts with the whole process of new service application. And that kind of becomes a relay race where we have the application and it gets handed to the customer service department and gets moved on to the engineering department to process the feasibility of that. Then we kind of pass it along to operations department to make sure that they can provide a cost to serve that individual parcel. And more often than not, it requires them to prepare a cost to serve the material and time. It is required to put something together in the time the customer needs. And then kind of starts the whole process back to the customer, providing them all the feedback and information from all these departments put together into one form. And in order to kind of reserve on the time and also provide the best information to the customer when they reach out, and to kind of expedite the process, we're kind of proposing a fixed fee that serves fair across the board for the customers that are applying for the application, and serves the district in terms of the time and effort to produce this information. So in order to do this process, we kind of went back, looked at the past 4 years, service records, all the costs it serves in each service area, because everywhere it's all different pressure zones, pressure conditions, they're totally different environment that people work in. So we kind of pulled all that data, kind of created an average set of information, followed along the material cost from this past year, and put together the cost estimate that we think will be fair across the board for anybody that is trying to get new service at the district. We're taking into account the service to be 30 feet, which kind of covers half of the county road right away. I mean, in most of the cases, we have the water line on one side of the road. So some people are paying more because they have to cover across and they have to pay for that. So by doing this, we're kind of just kind of cutting it in the middle. That kind of serves where we are kind of being fair. So all the parties have to pay their fair share on paving, which kind of adds up to most of the cost, and make it fair. So the cost that we have proposed is $6,000 to.
How many of these are we doing a year?
We do roughly about 10 to 15 of these. So the request is to ask the engineering committee to forward it to the full board.
Any issues with this?
Okay, you're proposing a 6,000 fixed fee, but then you go on to say that there may be other additional tasks, traffic management, job site setup, and is that? It doesn't seem to me like that it's a fixed, that it is a fixed fee if you can add on at will, or.
Oh, I'm sorry, if that's the impression it gave you. But those tasks are already included in this part because we are already incorporating that amount of time from our field staff into this, where they actually have to manage traffic, and somebody has to make sure that, you know, whenever there's equipment, that they can control the flow of traffic and manage all that in the field. So that is already included as part of that cost.
It would not exceed 6,000.
No, and to be clear, the only task, only cost that would exceed that we will have to still look at is if there is a highway crossing. In those instances, those can actually, those highway crossings require Caltrans permit, and they could drive up the cost, and they might need more than just service. They might require like a line extension or some sort. So that would require a totally different application and process for this.
And you said that the original impetus for this is just a time saving for so the person comes in making an inquiry. It doesn't have to go through back and forth and back and forth.
So in this process, by the time we receive the application and we return it to the customer, it usually takes us about 2 to 3 weeks to get back to the customer with the full cost. And at this point, if they're starting a new build, they can have all these costs upfront for their budgeting purposes. I mean, unless they go into a different fiscal year, where we are proposing that those costs will be adjusted per the cost index.
This HDR proposal said 53,000, not to exceed 53,000, implying that it might be less. Is there anything wrong with saying that the maximum fee will be 6,000, but if circumstances, maybe they don't have to do 30 feet, maybe they do 10 feet.
I mean, we do that right now, whereas like if they're only doing 10 feet, but it's kind of fair and equitable because it's for anybody. So somebody else who is paying for that on the other side is just the same. We're kind of averaging it out, so everybody pays the fair same cost. Kind of like what we have with the water meter metering cost. It's like the base rate. Everybody pays the same. Some areas is different, while in the others is what you would.
But I think it saves everybody overall because we're not having to do that individualized. That's the idea that we're trying to get.
Yes.
Well, I can see how it would save time if we take the average cost across the board for 4 years and it's at $6,000. But I could support this a lot more easily if it said $6,000, not to exceed $6,000.
You're saying somebody could.
But
make
then we would have to
request?
get back into that individualized assessment every time. That's where we get the cost savings for everybody, is if we're not.
And also, to add to that, I mean, some of the costs we've seen in the vicinity of $9,000 to $10,000 because they had to pay for the whole road crossing over. So by the time you average it out, it kind of makes it lower for those individuals, but also might raise the cost for certain individuals that, like you said, are just only doing 10 feet. I mean, there are other agencies that do it this way where they, like CPUD does it, where they have a set cost, where they have a base cost up to 10 feet. And anything above that, there's an added cost for each foot of line that they do. But they also don't provide the cost for the paving in that. So the paving cost is added on a later date. I mean, by looking at this and by calculating how much paving on average road that is about 12 feet wide, which we're dividing in the middle, we've come up with the paving cost, and all that is included, and this is all upfront. I know it kind of comes out as a sticker shock, but by the time we do the breakdown, and if we tag along those costs later, at a later date, that might be as annoying for the new customers.
It's consistent with how we do a lot of our other fees and charges where it's averaged. It's not an individual assessment. That's where the cost comes in.
That doesn't make it palatable for a guy who's he's the cost breakdown, and it includes $2,000 for paving, and there's no paving required. Well, that we're just averaging that in. I'm only one vote, but
I mean, we can definitely take that into consideration and kind of try to see what we can do to
I
address
mean, it
that.
seems to me that that maybe there is a path. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Where if somebody wants to go through the review process, I mean, this is clean for us, clean for the developer. But if somebody wanted to go through the several week process, they could make a request, but we would offer this and that, and then maybe we just see how it works, see how many people want to challenge it. I mean, it's basically because, if it's only 10 feet, somebody could go in and say, well, yeah, I will pay to have the review done, and I'll wait a couple weeks.
There might be another way to do it where if we standardize everything and then I'm just spitballing here, but maybe charge for paving in increments, right? And like if it's 10 feet, it's X dollars. If it's 30 feet, it's 3X.
Yeah, you might just take the paving out of it,
Okay.
out of this fee, and then just say, and come up with every 10 feet cost for paving.
That might be a good way to still have it all standardized and then just a kind of a unit charge for paving, because that's probably going to be the biggest difference.
Yes. If we can do that, I can address that when we.
Is that okay?
yes, better.
I mean, that would definitely drop the cost significantly.
Right. Let's
Thank you for,
come up with something else like that, please.
I think Francisco wants to.
Oh, Francisco? Francisco?
Here's where critical data plays a valuable role. I assume you guys have all your data regarding past requests for these types, and you have some way to average. Well, in this area, we typically run into this kind of situation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there should be an easy data-based way to say this covers 90% of the situations. I don't know if you have the staff or necessary data to make those kinds of analyses, but you're only dealing with areas that you can serve, and you know what the widths of those roads are, and you know that it's either 24 feet or 10 feet or whatever. And as a road manager, I have to be aware of asphalting costs, chip sealing costs, crack sealing costs, et cetera. And I can come up pretty close to what's going to cost me to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet of a driveway rehabilitation because somebody screwed up. Is it not possible to somehow look at your experience over the last 3 or 4 years and say, in this area, 15 feet. In this area, it's 80 feet, which, you know, crosses not only a 60-foot county road right away minimum, but addresses it. Seems like there's a little bit of more work could be done to say, you know, we're not likely to run into this ever because we don't have 4-lane roads. And most of the time we're going to run into 12 feet or 12 and a half feet, et cetera. Anything outside of that, it's going to be a 15% premium or a 10% premium, whatever the major cost driver is. It doesn't seem to be that difficult of a problem to create an algorithm that you guys could depend on 95% of the time. Is that asking too much?
I think that's what they've done.
It doesn't sound like that from a ratepayer's perspective.
Yeah, we looked at past experience and are trying to standardize that cost.
Right. So you've got statistical evidence that says, you know, at 3 deviations out, 99% of the time, it never exceeds this. Or have you just done like a finger in the air kind of analysis?
We track all of our work orders, do we not?
Yes, we do.
You know, and that's where we developed this
Okay.
concept.
Then it should be a simple mathematical thing. Find all the situations where we had to install new service. What's the length of the extension? And, you know, give me a bar chart. Boom. And if 95% of them fall under 15 feet, then 95% of the time you're going to charge whatever it takes to pave over and undig and do all the things you need to do to put in a service line for 15 feet.
Yeah, I think that's what we've done here. So,
Well, then you should be able to put it on a table. If
I
you
think
live
we
in
will.
this neighborhood, here's what it costs you. If you live in this neighborhood, here's what it costs you. Why? Because you have different road widths, different right of ways, and different construction costs that add to the total cost of putting a 5/8 inch line over to you.
okay, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so you understand what we want? Is there another? Okay. Sorry, Ralph, I didn't see you up there. Go ahead, please. Are you with us?
Okay, hello? Ralph
Yeah.
Copeland, Copperopolis. With this material list and pricing you're putting together for this connection, how are you going to address the fluctuating material costs, especially asphalt and petroleum, your diesel fuel, your renegotiated union contracts, that type of thing? Thank you.
That's what we've done. Am I?
Yeah, I
incorrect?
think the same with all of our other costs. The two options are we revisit the charge on a periodic basis or we apply an annual escalator. So we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much follow the federal reimbursement rate on some of these, especially on the equipment.
We
And
keep an eye on the construction indexes and all that stuff. And if it changes dramatically, we can change the fee.
yes.
All right. I think we've made this more complicated than it needs to be. Want to make it a little more complicated or?
I'd like to, yeah. That's my job.
All right. Okay, so you have direction. Okay, Timber Trails Redwood Tank booster pump.
This is a project that we had submitted to the Bureau of Reclamation for grant funding back in 2024, and we're bringing it back to the engineering committee because we're starting this process again. The grants, the USBR has made some grant funding made available for the WaterSmart through the WaterSmart Drought Resiliency Program, and the grant itself is about total funds for this program is about $13.5 million, and they're to award close to 20 of the grants through that funding. And in this grant, it's 50-50 share, 50% of the share comes from the local sources, and 50% is funded through the USBR. grant. And what we're trying to establish with this is we have a redwood tank in the Stanislaus Forest that serves the Timber Trail mobile home park. And it's been, it's seen better days. So in order to kind of make sure that it aligns with all the other improvements that we've done in terms of the redwood tanker replacement program, in the past, we would like to bring this to the current standards and replace it with steel or glass line tanks, and increase the capacity so that we can address the fire flow and reduce the risk of fire damage, especially in the highly forested area. So this grant, we're working with Lansted Consulting, our consultant. They brought this. They've been tracking all the other grants. Along with this, they were able to keep track of this when the funds were made available. They attended the webinar, and they brought it to Kevin's attention, and we were working towards preparing the application package and submitting it to USBR for their consideration. Last time when we did it, the reviewing staff at the Bureau of Reclamation, they said that our application was competitive, but it was lacking a few things. But since the funding was so small, the funding amount for the whole program was so small that it kind of got very competitive, and they addressed some of the smaller utilities or some other programs that or funds for other projects that they thought were better suited at the time. But we were in the top 10 percentile in trying to address the issues with our project. And so we're here to ask your recommendations or feedback from the committee to be brought in front of this application to be brought in front of the full board to pursue this grant. The project is estimated at in-house costs we have looked at this point with the proposed changes. We're looking at $3.1 million, and the maximum amount of grant that we can receive is $1.5 million. So the district share would be $1.6 million.
Assume the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that'd be fine.
Perfect.
Surprised there's 500 lots in that.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
What? Good comment. Okay, Francisco.
Hey, we're over here in the ratepayer country categorizing your CIP projects into 3 tiers. One of them being safety and regulatory, the second one being leakage or efficiency, and the third one being growth or strategic growth. This one would fit in tier 1, safety, right? Based on the fact that we're replacing a vulnerable redwood tank with something better. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be replaced
I mean,
with
those tiers, we don't use those tiers, but
I know you
that's
don't.
how, yeah.
I know you don't. I know you don't. But to make it easy for ratepayers to understand what they're paying for, we're recommending that you consider classifying them in tiers that they can understand. And they can understand the fact that a redwood tank in the middle of a forest is a high safety risk for water, and we would heartily support its replacement. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to project updates. Juan.
Holy mackerel. Not that guy.
Starting off with so far, DA Wood has completed 147 service line installs. They're on the backside now. They're
wrapping up on that, installing a few more. Then they'll moving into,
How many are they, how many are left?
Juan, you want to comment on how many are left? I could say it for you.
Okay.
We hoping that it was a little bit overestimate that we're going to be close to it. So as of when we wrote this report, it was 147. So they did another 16, I believe, last week. So we getting close to the end.
Okay, they're on a good pace. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, once that's completed, they'll move in, transition to finishing up the installs of the PRVs, establish the pressure zones, and then transition to paving the Hardixon Lane, which is anticipated to start in June. After that's completed, they'll then transition to the remainder of the remaining roads and complete those. Transitioning to the West Point Willseyville Consolidation Project. So this project is now complete and currently working through the final grant closeout requirements with the State Water Board. And in doing so, we're asking for an extension with a permanent addendum. All right, so moving on then to Copper Cove Pond 6 SAF project. So we did secure an additional $3.1 million in Section 219 federal funding to cover the increased construction costs. We had an in-person meeting with the Army Corps at the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant last month, as well as we're having ongoing virtual coordination meetings. So we expect the delivery of the SAF unit on May 27th. Our surveying efforts for construction have been completed, and district staff has begun pad construction while finalizing procurement of the piping and electrical materials needed for installation. So the Army Corps is also preparing an updated letter report to clarify project costs and confirm that the current priority is complete is to complete the tertiary treatment plant.
Case, there's the raising of the pond is still on hold. Is that?
Yes, that's my understanding. Moving on to Copper Cove Sea Transmission and Booster Pump Station. So Mazingo has completed their install of the new 20-inch water transmission main, and then the delivery of the booster pump station electrical components are scheduled for delivery by the end of the year. The contractor is also currently working on the completing work at the C-tank wood building and the altitude valve piping, and then the final pavement restoration has begun this week. In the West Point Drought Project, so phase 1 submittals, including the 60% design, environmental documentation, and permitting have been submitted to Cal OES. Cal OES has completed its review and forwarded the package to FEMA. And then based on prior experience, construction funding approval is anticipated within approximately 12 to 18 months, pending completion of environmental review. Moving on to the Lake Tolek Intertie project. So we have completed design drawings, and they've been submitted to the county for construction encroachment permitting. And then we anticipate advertising the project for bid on June 1st with our kickoff for the project anticipated fall of this year. So then the Huckleberry Lift Station project, the design and CEQA are complete. Construction is expected to proceed once funding is secured through an upcoming grant application. The La Contenta wastewater treatment plant improvements. So environmental studies for the phase 3 improvements have been initiated and are currently being conducted by eCorp Consulting, as well as an ISMND, an additional study mitigated negative declaration, is being prepared. And following the public review period, a final ISMND will be completed. And upon completion of the environmental review, 100% design will be finalized and aligned with upcoming grant application requirements. Moving on to the Ebbets Pass Master Plan hydraulic model. So we actually just met with HydroScience today, and we're starting to tweak and really tighten up our hydraulic model. And we're seeing big movements towards improvement and having a finished product. Then moving on to Sawmill and Wallace Tank Replacement Project. So we've submitted the lot line adjustment application to the county. It's been conditionally approved. And then also we have the final map for the lot line adjustment has been submitted to the county surveyor. And then once that's complete, we'll be able to have be on an expedited process working alongside the county as well as our title company and SBI and CAL FIRE to wrap up and close that project or close that acquisition and start the project. Moving on to the Arnold Sewer Master Plan. So Verdantis, our consulting engineer, has installed 7 flow meters. Those were installed March 9th and March 10th to evaluate I&I, or assess our lift station capacities and calibrate the hydraulic model. We've since captured a few rain events, and we've also looked at some preliminary data to look at what kind of I&I we may be experiencing, but that data collection is still ongoing. The Arnold Secondary Clarifier. So this project has kicked off. A.W. Emerson has mobilized. They've installed their pollution prevention measures, cut down the trees, removed the roots, and that's all been conducted while we had observation from the Miwok tribe. And then the construction for the aerobic digesters is scheduled to begin late this week. And our first progress payment is pending USDA. All right.
Any questions or comments?
Yes.
Going back to the Copper Cove C transmission booster station, what is an altitude valve?
An altitude valve, it will allow water to pass up to a point where the pressure reaches a desired pressure, then the valve shuts. So like say for a tank, you want to fill a tank, but you want to overfill a tank. So once the backside on the valve, the pressure on the backside of the valve reaches a certain point, it will shut.
Float valve.
Like a float valve.
Altitude valve.
You know,
I have to put it.
I mean, it may even actually have another setting too. When it reaches a certain minimum pressure, it'll open up again.
So I've got a cattle feeding watering tank, so I go down to the hardware store and ask them for an altitude valve. They'll know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right. In case a lot of times you have like 2 floats, where you have a minimum flow and a max flow. You have an on and an off. The altitude valve can kind of do both.
Okay, thank you.
all right, Ralph, do you have a question? Comment?
Yes, this is regarding Mazingo's 20-inch pipeline here in Copper on Little John Road. They pushed through a $500,000 change order. I'm wondering, and I haven't been able to find a copy of their change order, of Mazingo's paperwork. Is there a chance that can be made public? Because I find it hard to believe that we're paying for their equipment that tore up our roads.
No, this is for, there was pavement changes that had to be made as part of the project. So we brought that to the public meeting at the board, I think 2 meetings ago. So it should be in the agenda item for that meeting.
There's no cost.
And all those agendas are still online, right?
But the change order was for paving, right?
It was like
300,000 was for the paving, and
yes, that's correct.
And you guys know what Little John Road is like. I mean, their backhoe, their treads were almost side to end or width on the road.
So the reason for the change order was there was some conflicts and we had to move the pipeline closer to the middle of the road. So it resulted in more paving. It was supposed to be off on the shoulder, but because of conflicts, we couldn't do it there. And there was Charmstone also had additional paving. And so there was a different changes in conditions that created that paving. It wasn't a result from anything that Mazingo did.
It's old news. There's nothing I can do about it, but I would like to see Mazingo's work, and it's nowhere to be found in the public domain.
Yeah, that was brought for public discussion on April 8th meeting, I believe.
Ralph, you should be able to go to our website and find that agenda item on, these
I
guys are
did.
saying April 8th.
There's nothing from Mazingo. There's none of their paperwork. There's discussion, there's approval, there's reasons why, but there's nothing that shows Mazingo's timesheets, their equipment? What they
This
have-
is by it, the asphalt's paid by the ton. So it's a calculation based on the thickness, the width, and the unit weight of the
How
asphalt.
did, they had to give you a number, $412,000, $460,000.
Yeah, we
Okay.
calculated the overrun on the asphalt and times it by the unit price, and that's how we came up with the dollar amount. So their unit price is fixed per ton. So that's based on the fixed price. So when they,
Okay, so what I'm
when
getting,
when
I'm
they,
getting stonewalled. You're not gonna show us Mazingo's work. You're not gonna show us their spreadsheet.
we're gonna get, no, we get asphalt tags when they place the asphalt, and we pay the actual quantity of asphalt that they place. So if that number underruns that estimate, then we only pay them for the actual place. So there's no paperwork. It's the tonnage is what you're paid for in-place tonnage.
So we did the calculation on what we thought the change order.
Yeah, we
needed
did
to
the
be.
calculation, then Mazingo did the calculation on, because we institute this change. So it was a change order directed by the district. So we
You
said, move the pipe over
instituted it?
here. You have additional tonnage. Here's here's our price. We're paying you the unit price you bid on this project per ton. So it was a change order that was change order we initiated.
Because of the new alignment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
No,
Francisco.
it's not okay. It's not okay, Davidson. It's not. It's a $500,000 out of my pocket is what it is. And there's no work. No one's showing me the work. Russ, you're my.
I think you just have to be more specific about what you want to see. Kevin just,
Okay, if you guys figured out the tonnage and all that, where, don't you have a printout? Don't you have a printout of, we did this and this? Don't you have documentation to back up the 462,000? Where is
The
that
works,
work?
the work just started today. They started paving asphalt today. So our inspectors out there documenting every load that comes in.
But he's talking about
You-
the basis of the
No,
calculation for the
I'm
change
talking
order.
about the.
How did we
paperwork.
calculate the cost of the change order?
I took the linear foot, the width of trench in the thickness and multiplied by the length, and then divided.
we have that, just
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll,
get it to them. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
simple
just get it to
calculation.
them.
There's nothing easier to figure out than,
And
quantities of pavement.
any documentation from Mazingo.
Make a public request. I mean, I think we got it. I mean, I don't think it's a
Yeah.
big deal.
I think
I mean,
we have, I think we understand what
I
you're looking
know.
for. We'll get it to you.
Thank you.
All right,
very much.
anything else, Ralph?
No, sir.
Hey, Francisco?
I'm over on the Arnold Sewer Master Plan where you all have some preliminary numbers on the INI. Is there any way to publish the before and after and do the delta on improvement and link that into the impact on extra pumping costs, extra treatment costs, et cetera, and get an idea of what the ROI is for the ratepayers to say, good job?
Yeah, I would say that's the underlying or overarching goal of the master plan. So when it comes to preliminary, it's more of, in a meeting with our consulting engineer and looking at their tables, sharing screens and discussing from a, mile high perspective, like what we're seeing. So as we collect more data, we're going to be able to really dial down, I think, what you're after. So
Well,
part of the result is you figure out
they're predicting a super duper El Nino, which typically results in extra precipitation, which is what you really need to get a good solid INI. You need a really good, atmospheric river condition to say, look, it rained like hell here and we sucked up half of it or we didn't suck up any of it. And so I'm assuming that better numbers will be available in the, say, November, December timeframe. Is that your estimation?
Yeah, so the good thing about infiltration is that if you have 100% saturation, at that point, you're not going to see as much difference. Now, inflow, you could. Now, that's what we're looking for. And our meters are sensitive enough that, and are spread out strategically enough that if we're going to have inflow, it should show itself.
Great.
Whether we have,
Publication.
El Nino record type rains, or if we're going to have more of your annual rainfall. So as of right now, like I said, preliminary, I've had one chance to look at it. We actually talked about last week. So I will say one good thing, one very good thing, is that inflow does not seem to be a major problem as of right now. We do recognize that there are some issues in some areas of improvement. But like I said, it's too early to tell. I think we're going to find more problems, or we hope you don't, rather. But if you are going to have problems, rather, that they're going to show themselves. And we feel
Yes.
confident enough that the location of our meters that we feel like we're going to be pretty well covered.
We're looking
But-
forward to your new data gathering capabilities, because I&I obviously drives expense, as does NRW. So we're focusing on ILI, I&I, and NRW, and we're looking forward to seeing how you guys make progress on that. Thank you.
Oh, we are too, because that's going to help drive, where we should focus our efforts for capital
You bet.
improvement projects. Yeah.
You bet. You bet. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Good,
I'm good.
fantastic. Hey, general managers, brief comments?
Where does it say that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that constraint.
Yeah, I know.
Just the only comment I have is just kudos to the engineering team. Some of these items here have been kind of lingering for a long time, and so really appreciate with all the other projects and stuff that you guys have going on. Appreciate you guys bringing this stuff up to a head. So thank you.
All right, directors, do you have any comments or future agenda items?
Yeah, just to kind of repeat what you and I talked about a month or two ago about the what I perceive to be a disincentive for commercial development here, the way we charge potential commercial customers. I requested a report on that, and I haven't seen anything, so I'd like to get that scheduled.
All right. So noted by staff, I'm sure. Okay, I have no comment. The next meeting looks like it's going to be July 7th, 2026. Meeting's adjourned.